Today we have a very special guest, John Watson, a young man I've known. Oh gosh, John, I think we go back almost 8 years when I became
Yeah,
CEO of Brevard Family
right.
Partnership, and now we're Family Partnerships of Central Florida. And I remember, I'm not too sure which was our first engagement, but I believe it was when I attended one of the Brevard Youth Leadership Councils. Around the room were a lot of aspiring young people, but no one was like in command of the voice, and until I looked at you and I'm like, this young man is pretty special. And I knew it then, and I think about all these years later, I didn't know how darn special you are. And no, no, seriously, I'm so flattered to journey this together. I mean, you've been a significant part of my professional career since being in Central Florida. And I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit of your story and a little bit about you and your background, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I appreciate the high praise. The feeling is very mutual. I know you've been a great mentor and a parental figure for me for a long time. So, really honored to join such a prestigious group of individuals you've had on this podcast. So, my name is John Watson. I am a former foster youth here in Brevard County. I'm currently a legislative analyst for the Department of Children and Families, and so I've had a really fortunate experience in child welfare, and so that's why I can't get too far from it, and that's why I really value and cherish all the work that your organization does, and the opportunities that I've had through it. A little bit about my history. I entered care when I was 13, and so mother passed when I was younger, and then just wasn't a great situation at home. And I had a very atypical case in that the parental plan was completed, but it just I was so well off in my foster home that the judge allowed me to kind of stick around until I aged out. So I actually stayed for 5 years. I only went to three homes. Again, very fortunate. And my third home was a great Haitian family, and they kept me until I was think probably 20, and I went to work for the department and moved to Orlando. So I always love working with young people, and I always love working with your staff whenever we've had opportunities to do events. And it's just really, really important the work that you guys do.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, I'm going to get a little emotional because I hear you say I've only been through three homes. I've been through one in my life. When I think anything more than one is an adjustment. How did you manage going through adjustment and change?
Not well, if I'm being honest, not well at all. So I had actually been through far more homes than that. That was just prior to
Oh,
coming into care. So I had bounced from a lot of relatives, dealing with loss at an early age, and being in a home where emotional expression wasn't really accepted was something that I struggled with. And so it really wasn't until coming into foster care that, after expressing all the anger that I had pent up and not knowing how to share, I actually came into a home where they said, no matter what you do, I'm not kicking you out. And so that was the moment for me because I had just been so used to being too much for people. And so finding a family where I just wasn't too much and I was just who I was really allowed me to kind of flourish. So I'm very blessed.
I've worked with many young people who have gone through the foster care system, and I think about folks like you who are humble and vulnerable enough to say, I wasn't that easy to manage in the day. But you didn't create your situation. You know, you were a product of your situation. And you know me with my clinical background.
Hmm.
I think deeper into people and where they've been, and it doesn't dictate where they're going. Boy, is that true for you. Tell us about how far you've come and what you're doing.
Well, like I said, I had a great home. And so at that point, I was able to kind of really focus on school and extracurriculars. And so for about age 16, I was approached by an amazing woman named Angela Oliver Burgess, who I know you know very well. She was head of an organization called Smile Forward, formerly Smile for Budgie.
Right.
And so she came to my foster home, met my family, and said, I would love you to join this leadership program that I am starting. And so it went from there. Almost got kicked out of there actually because it was a 16-year-old, not very good at expressing myself in a healthy way. And so through that, I had opportunities to meet you and a lot of your staff and engage in different events, and that actually opened me up for professional opportunities. And through there, I was actually participating in our independent living programs here in Florida, which are very phenomenal compared to a lot of other areas, and was able to actually get connected with the Department of Children and Families. And so I was able to join their team through the work that I did here locally and here with our Youth Leadership Council.
Yeah. I think about your journey and my journey, although
Hmm.
we're at slightly different years and hours. I've worked too for the Department of
Yeah.
Children and Families. So we've worked for the public sector, and then we've worked within around the private sector because part of the population that are involved in the Brevard Youth Leadership is from the foster care system that is overseen by our organization. When you do a compare and contrast about how the quote unquote public private partnership is, be
Hmm.
like DCF
Hmm.
and lead agencies, do you see any change in over the years? Is there change culturally or systemically?
I think again, my experience is far pales from yours, but I would say from my limited experience, I think it's definitely changed a lot in the past couple of years. I think we've gone from a system that is high on policies and priorities, whereas now I think from what I've seen, our shift is more towards communities, and so I think really embracing what community-based care stands for and the purpose of it is to really empower the communities. Obviously, there's still a level of oversight that needs to be had and policy that is comes from the top. But I would like to think that our communities are really the ones that are empowered to support families because they're the ones that know how to take care of them
Yeah,
best.
this is true. The youth voice. Do you remember it back in the day? And do you know what it's like today? And can you tell the audience? I'm sure people
Night
are
and day.
dying to hear what has changed. How do you know change has occurred?
Yeah, that's a great point. From the Brevard Youth Leadership Council, which, if you don't mind, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Please.
So, as I had mentioned, the Brevard Youth Leadership Academy was kind of the precipitous before the council was created, I believe in 2018,
Yeah,
2017.
yeah,
And so that 6 month leadership program really empowered myself and a lot of my peers to be advocates and leaders in our community. And then from there, we created the Brevard Youth Leadership Council, which you have been a very staunch supporter of, and many of your staff have as well. And so that body is essentially made up of young people with lived experience. So currently in and formerly from foster care in Brevard County, ages 13 to 26. And their priorities are really to focus on local community priorities and help support local initiatives. And so we've been able to do a lot, both locally but statewide as well. There have been a lot of organizations that have kind of put forward youth voice statewide, and Brevard was actually an example of that, as you
yeah.
know. We were a model in a lot of ways, and I think we were one of the first. I know Miami probably has this beat, but I think Brevard was the first community-driven youth council, and it really is the model for the rest of the state that may not have the kind of power that a lot of the bigger areas are able to use.
So, what is a message can we give caregivers and youth who might be listening to this that would lead them to at least inquire
Hmm.
about these councils because they're brewing all over the state and they have a purpose? What might those individuals, both caregivers
Hmm.
and youth, what would they gain from being a part of that movement?
That's a great question. Caregivers, I'd say, play the most important role. I think hearing from the young people is obviously what we want, but what we found in our work here is that participation is really goes only as far as the caregiver is willing to push the young person, right? And that goes back to normalcy and mentorship. This is what you would want for your own child, right? There's no difference whether they're yours or placed in your care. I'd like to think that we try to treat all of our young people the same. And so that includes sometimes pushing them a little bit
Yeah.
and really helping them see how far they can go. So I would say the message would be believe in your young folks. I think that everybody has the capacity to make a change in some way. Whatever that change looks like, there are different levels, but a lot of the times our young people need a little push. And that also comes from the caregiver pushing themselves as well. It's definitely a commitment outside of whatever their original responsibilities are. But I can tell you from the caregivers that we've engaged with our young people have seen a massive impact. It really helps shape them a lot as young
You
folks.
know, it's interesting. I agree with you. I think the word push is so appropriate because I think sometimes people get to a place of complacency and or where I don't know if I step in, will it make a
Mm.
difference until you do it, right? I mean, when you first went in there, I know you were a younger teen and all that and with a different attitude, but after a while, when you looked around at youth who were coming in your shadows into the council and youth voice and choice, if you will, how did you see the evolution of some of them, and why did it happen? Do you think for others? Because we've seen that together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just empowering them and then allowing them to be in a space where their voices are heard. That's the biggest thing. I know you know this from your clinical background, but a lot of our young people are disenfranchised when they come into the system, and long before that, right? A lot of times in their own families, not encouraged to speak up and to be heard and express themselves in a healthy
Yeah.
way, right? And so when we're giving them that healthy space and that avenue, that opportunity, that platform, a lot of them just really flourish. And so that comes down to, like you mentioned, the caregivers being supportive and pushing, but also to the rest of the audience that is receiving the message, right? A lot of areas that are building councils or maybe struggling to build councils across the state, from my experience, the biggest challenge with that is not having the buy-in from leadership or from frontline staff to
Yeah.
facilitate. It's a tough job. We're very fortunate to have community partners here like Smile Forward that are able to carry the mission, but without the support from the agency, it really is hard to sustain.
Yeah, it really takes all of us to come
Mm-hmm.
together. I'm really grateful about you being here with us. I'm grateful about our relationship. I mean, it's a lifelong one, you know. I'm always going to be there for you, and I know I can always count on you. And I'm thinking about the journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's all about relationships. What are your thoughts about the relationships that caregivers need to invest in when having children and youth coming into their homes? And what do you think about the value of the children and youth who are coming into care, building relationships, not only with caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
but guardians and
Mm.
caseworkers even?
Mm-hmm.
What is advice? I mean, how old are you today?
I'm 25. Got a
Right?
long way to go, my friend.
Imagine, oh, a long way to go, but I mean, I think you've come a tremendous
Thank
way.
you.
But at 25, what is the big message about the value and importance of relationships in what we call a system of care?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I feel like I won't be able to do this question justice after watching the three gentlemen from the transport union you had previously. I think they really embody what that message is you have people who are interested in giving, and then you also have to be able to link them to people who need to be given, right? The give and take. And so for our caregivers, I think having the supports and being aware of the supports and willing to receive those supports is very important. But also embracing the community, like you said, bringing in your association of foster parents, bringing in your guardian ad litems, your case managers, your department staff, your other volunteers, case management organizations, etc.
That's interesting to give and to be able to receive. That's really beautifully said. And I don't know that we take the time to think about where do we stand in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I also think about, and I share this with our workforce, and I share this with leaders, and I share this with guardians and other folks that work as stakeholders in this
Mm-hmm.
community. And I think about, do you go into situations where you're building new relationships, trying to understand before being understood?
Mm.
That has been such a resonating notion in my mind that it should change behavior. Like you probably have heard me say, how do we leave
Mm-hmm.
others feeling after
Mm-hmm.
we've engaged them?
Mm-hmm.
And if we start thinking about that way, that whole that quote, don't judge a book by its cover becomes so real to
Right.
me. I mean, in so many ways, I've heard people's impression of who foster youth are, who are foster parents, who are caseworkers, and make assumptions that maybe for one good or one bad experience, all of a sudden they create a universality of understanding of what and who people are. How should we, as a professional community, learn to receive young people coming into the system? Where do we begin?
That's a great question. I think having these kinds of dialogues is the first step. I think to go on to your point about empathy, I think that's something that you really champion a lot. The quote that I think from you that I remember the most is people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so that really speaks to what you've talked about, right? Making sure that we see people for who they are, especially our young people, as they're forming their perceptions of themselves and of the world around them. They don't need to be told what things are and are not. They need to be told that their place in the world is there for them, and so they can make of that what they want. I think mentorship is a great opportunity for that as well. That comes from not just being a caregiver, right, but being involved, wanting to be involved, right? Asking partner organizations, how can I help? I think that's really the foundation of it, and being willing to fill whatever role you can. That makes a big, big difference.
Yeah. Although I didn't create that quote, I am an ambassador of it. No, really,
To me, it's a Phil quote.
you're very kind. But it's so true.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
sometimes we complicate things on the road to journey. This is the kind of setting, the kind of an individual that I think more and more people need to hear. I think you bring a very fresh look at the life and times of young people who come through the system in the sense that you reflect on your own contribution in the early years. You make a comparison of later years. But the fact that you're reflective, to me, has always been the thing that inspires me about you because that means your mind is open to the future. And when a mind is open to the future, possibilities are going to meet you there. And I know it to be true. I'm looking forward. I can only imagine where John will be in just a few years from now.
Thank you.
So you've been involved on so many levels, the local level, the state level, and everything in between. And you're only 25. Come on. I want to see your ID. So talk about the focus on the voucher program.
Mm-hmm.
Its significance. Maybe you can give it a little fundamental background for the audience that may not understand what that's all about and why is it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Foster Youth to Independence, or FY voucher, is a federal funding stream, really through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Recently, here in Florida, I believe it was 2024, Senate Bill 584 was actually championed by one of our statewide youth groups here in Florida,
Yep.
and that bill was really targeted towards the housing voucher program to make it more available statewide. And so, what this voucher does is it allows young people that have foster care experience that are aging out of the system to receive basically a housing stipend to really cover most of the cost of their living expenses, as long as they are, gainfully employed or pursuing education. And really, it's a great opportunity for them to get ahead in life because without housing, it's very hard to move
Yeah.
forward in your adulthood.
Yeah. It's interesting that sometimes the youth are youth and they're
Hmm.
thinking about youthful things and just living life. And things like this are extremely important. And I think maybe it's incumbent upon us adults to engage them. And I think about that kind of engagement. When do you have conversations that talk about your future?
Mm.
And I think about the important role of mentorship.
Hmm.
What does mentorship mean to you? And where do we need to go with it?
I love that question because it's played such an important role in my life. I've been blessed to have many mentors. I like to think that, a lot of them have been great mentors and a lot of them have been mentors that have taught me things that I don't want to do, later in my career. So I would say I have really three strong mentors, yourself being one. I know Angela, I mentioned earlier, is another one. And then a former supervisor that I had was a really great mentor for me as well. And so everybody teaches you something, right? And I believe everybody can learn something from somebody. Everybody has something to teach and to be taught. And if we really just all saw each other as learning experiences, I think the world would be a much more cohesive place. But for me, it is really like we talked about earlier, right? Being able to give and to receive. You've given me a lot in my life, whether it be advice or a listening ear or, just all around support in general. You've celebrated my birthday at your house. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of relationship that you don't find in a lot of people, and it really means a lot to me, and I know it would mean a lot to any young person that was in a similar situation. So I think it's so impactful, and it could be very minute, I would say. My strongest memory from one of my mentors was the moment that I realized that she really cared about me. We were in the car, and we were talking about some event. I don't even remember the situation, but I just remember that I said something along the lines of, "Well, you don't care because you're there because you have to be. You're assigned to my case." And she got really mad, and I said, "Why are you so mad?" And it was at that moment she told me, "I'm mad because I don't like that you feel that way about our relationship." And it was at that moment that I realized that this person is there for me, not just because of my circumstance. That's where mentorship is important.
Well, I got a footnote that beautiful sentiment. You're very kind and generous with your words. I don't know if you know how much you light my fire inside about why I do what I do. I mean, you've moved me all along my journey. When I came to Brevard and I just became a CEO for this organization, I didn't know what always to expect
Hmm.
about the lives that I and we as an organization are going to impact. And the more I got to know you, the more I realized we really need to invest time in those we believe we're serving. And how do you even measure serving, right? Is it just an action? No, it's got to be something that people feel like they're receiving.
Right.
And when we talk, and we still talk
Mm-hmm.
virtually and on the phone and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff, boy, when you speak at 25, I reflect. I said, my goodness, I'm going to think about things as a leader, being mindful of the eyes of John Watson. You really look at systems, people, and relationships with an age that far exceeds your chronological age. You should realize that and appreciate that because it's true. And I talk about you often, even, well, look, you and I, we go up and we talk to legislature
Mm-hmm.
together, right? And I don't think they care to hear from me as much as they want to, as much as you today. I mean, it's really wonderful. And wondering why might there be hesitation for adults to take a chance and reach out? What can we tell adults about who young people are and why we need to approach them in the spirit of mentorship?
That's a great question, and that's something that I really struggled a lot in my earlier professional years and mentor and menteeing years. Is you're not always the person for everyone,
Mm.
right? I believe that everybody has a person. Like whenever you think, who do I need to call when something happens? Most of us have a person or a couple people in mind, but that doesn't mean that you are that person for everybody, right? And so I would say there's a lot of trepidation around not being an effective support for a young person, but I don't think that's really the focus. I think the focus should be more on what impact can I have on somebody else's life, right? No matter how big or small that impact is, I'm very blessed to have learned from a lot of people that do mentorship, and they don't always impact everybody that they come in contact with. But there is always that one or two folks that they do impact, and that changes the trajectory of their lives.
Yeah.
I think everybody has the potential to impact a young person's life. And so, whatever you do, whatever that profession is, say you are an engineer, right? We have a lot of them here in Brevard County.
Hmm.
And there's plenty of young folks that are in our system that want to do engineering.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that this engineer will mentor all of the young people that are interested, but maybe just one young person that they just have a lot in common, and they just hit it off, right? That's a lifelong connection, like you mentioned. It's not a puzzle, not like one size fits all, but every piece is different, right? And so the more pieces we have, the more we're able to make our young people whole. And so I would say for anybody who's listening that may be a little timid about mentorship, it's not necessarily about what you can offer. It's just about who you are and the impact that you can have on somebody else.
Yeah. I think the value also that appears to be something that you emulate is that sort of unconditional acceptance of
Mm,
someone in that kind of relationship. Just be who you are, and then for the mentor, accept them as they are,
mm,
and take it from there. I mean, it's really not that hard. I'm
yeah,
not too sure why people are hesitant, but there is opportunity.
yeah.
Matter of fact, if people went to familypartnerships.org, they will see that there's opportunity to get
Hmm.
involved. So last year, almost at this time, we had our annual golf tournament,
Hmm.
and we're going to have it again at Eagle Creek on the 17th of this month.
Awesome.
Last year, you were the speaker at our. You started off that whole day with your inspirational words. It's funny, John. To this day, more people talk about who was that young man and how wonderful he spoke. I don't know if you realize that, but I still get it to this day. I said, and I'll say, well, I was there too. No, but seriously, I hope you might be able to swing by again this year and
Yeah.
join us if you're around. But what does it mean when people say, "Hey, share with us a few words of inspiration"? What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I think you're being too kind. I think that golf course is a beautiful range. I think they were talking about that far more than whatever they heard. But thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I hope the event goes well. It's a phenomenal way to give back to the community, right? And when it goes to show the impact of community-based care, right? What
Yeah.
better support to provide than from the community?
And you're there to talk about, your story. Your story isn't only about where you've been. It's where you're at and where, darn it, where you're headed. And you're headed for greatness. I mean, I think you're great now. I can only imagine what kind of impact you're going to have the rest of your life's journey. And I want to be a spectator of that. you know?
Thank you, Phil. I'm grateful.
Well, this is just one of many young people who have inspired all of us professionals in this industry. And now he sits beside me as a colleague in this industry, advocating for children and youth from all walks of life. And I want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for the years that we've known each other, and for the years that we're going to continue to celebrate and walk beside each other and make everlasting impact. Thank you, John.
Likewise. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.